بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجبين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد بن عبد الله بن عبد المطلب الهاشمي القرشي وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته وتبع هداه إلى يوم الدين وبعد. So alhamdulillah, we are back to take from the outpourings of this Fayd al-Rahmani wal-Fath al-Rabbani of Sayyidi Muhyiddin Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani radiyallahu anhu wa arda', and I believe we have reached the 29th majlis, 29th discourse. Or the 28th discourse. And as we have stated before, just as a reminder, these are the sermons that Sayyid Abd al-Qadir Jilani would give 3 times a week, twice in the madrasa that he was bequeathed to him from his own teacher, his own sheikh, and once in what's called the ribat, which is, as we mentioned, a type of zawiyah or sort of specialized training for people who are seeking a spiritual path. And this was done over 2 years or so, or 2 Hijri years, 545 and 546 of the Hijrah. And we stated that there were 400 pens that would be writing down what the Shaykh would be saying during these majalis. And we can tell from the tone and the language of the majalis that was a serious majlis, serious discourse that he had. It was stated, as we saw previously, that he would go without notes, without prepared notes, but he would usually begin with a verse of the Quran or a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and then whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would kind of bequeath to him, مَا يَفْتَحُ اللَّهُ لَهُ, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would open for him during these majalis, then he would be coming from that. And that's important because he also said that in his method, let's say, of da'wah, his understanding of da'wah, is that the da'i is doing so by the idhn, by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if they're doing it for Allah and towards Allah and with Allah and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the words that they say are not theirs. They're not coming out of what he mentions many, many times, as we've seen, النفس والهوى والطبع, right? It's not coming out of the ego. It's not coming out of mere caprice. It's not coming out of just personal inclination or the desire to impress or to gain following and to gain followers and so forth. And he said many times that he's there for his students, for their sake, not for his sake. And in that is kind of one of the the isharat, or one of the criteria, because oftentimes we get asked, how do we know, which teacher to listen to or which sheikh to follow, and what are the signs? And sometimes people are not what they seem. One of the isharat, one of the criteria, is that they don't invite to themselves; they invite to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not about them. They don't want you for them. They don't want to say, oh, I have X number of students or X number of followers or so forth, but they are seeking your own welfare. Otherwise, if they did not feel that there was an idhn, a permission, and not just a permission, but a mandate, let's say, from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they would much prefer to be alone and much prefer to worship in isolation and not have the burden and responsibility of talking to people and being in that position where their deen may hang on the words that they say or the conversations that they have and their ability to isti'ab, yastaw'ibun, to absorb people and to be generous of soul. And when they reach their kind of maturation in a spiritual sense, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends them back. And all of these things that we're talking about, we find incidents and occurrence of them in the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So one may make the argument that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during the Isra and Mi'raj, which happened while he was still in Mecca, just a few months after the passing of his wife Khadija and his uncle Abu Talib, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam Asra bihi al-Masra ila Bayt al-Maqdis, took him in the night journey to Jerusalem, and then Urija bihi ila Bayt al-Izzah, and then he was sent to عند سدرة المنتهى عندها الجنة المأوى إذ يغشى السدرة ما يغشى ما زاغ البصر وما طغى لقد رأى من آيات ربه الكبرى. So on that night he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a manner commensurate with his majesty that has no such honor has been given to any other prophet in this life, though it would be inshallah forthcoming in the next life for the prophets and others. After all of that, and this was the night that the 5 prayers were made obligatory, the revealings, as it were, of the Fatiha was the night of Isra and Mi'raj. So many things happened in that night. And then the Prophet ﷺ returns back to Mecca, right? He returns back to the people. He has to be amongst them. And imagine that, from his perspective, after seeing what he saw and hearing what he heard and being exposed to what he was exposed to. So it can only be by a mandate, by a command, by amr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he goes back to the people. So this is kind of the message that we're beginning, inshallah, to see and glean from the words of Shaykh Sayyidi Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani. So this is the 20th discourse. He begins by saying عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه جاء إليه رجل فقال له إني أحبك في الله عز وجل فقال له اتخذ البلاء جلبابا اتخذ الفقر جلبابا أنك تريد تتصف بصفتي تتصف بي لأن من شرط المحبة الموافقة. أبو بكر الصديق رضي الله عنه لما صدق في محبة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنفق عليه جميع ماله واتصف بصفته وشاركه في الفقر حتى تخلل بالعباء وافقه ظاهرا وباطنا سرا وعلانية. وأنت يا كذاب تدعي محبة الصالحين وتخبئ عنهم دنانيرك ودراهمك تريد القرب منهم والمصاحبة لهم كن عاقلا هذه محبة كاذبة. المحب لا يخبئ عن محبوبه شيئا ويؤثره على كل شيء كان الفقر ملازما للنبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يفارقه. ولهذا قال الفقر أسرع إلى من يحبني من سيل الماء إلى منتهى. وقالت عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها ما زالت الدنيا علينا كدرة عسرة ما دام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فينا فلما قبض صبت الدنيا صبا فشرط حب الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم الفقر وشرط حب الله عز وجل البلاء. So in the English, those who are following, page 178. It is reported that a man came to the Prophet ﷺ one day and said to him, I love you for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. So he replied, the Prophet ﷺ, clothe yourself in misfortune, clothe yourself in poverty. Meaning, since you wish to acquire my attributes, to possess my character, because a prerequisite of love, mahabba, is conformity, muwafaqa. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu was so sincere in loving the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he spent his entire fortune to support him. He assumed his character and became his partner in poverty to the point where he did not even have a cloak to wear. He adapted himself to him outwardly and inwardly, in private and in public. As for you, O liar, you claim to love the righteous, the salihin, yet you hide your dinars and your dirhams from them, so gold and silver coins, while wishing to get close to them and to enjoy their friendship. Be sensible. This is false love. The lover keeps nothing hidden from his beloved, whom he prefers above all else. Poverty was the constant companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and it never left him. This is why he said, poverty flows more rapidly towards someone who loves me than a flood of water towards its destination. Aisha said, radiallahu anha, the world never ceased to be troublesome and difficult for us as long as the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was in our midst. Then when he was taken away, the world, the dunya, yani, poured down on us in torrents. So the prerequisite for the love of the Messenger ﷺ is poverty, and the prerequisite for the love of Allah Azza wa Jal is tribulation. One of the wise is reported as having said, tribulation, bala, has been put in charge of wala, of friendship, lest anyone claim to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in spite of his falsehood, hypocrisy, and pretense. So what does this mean? That misfortune or poverty is a shart, is a condition of love. Well, first we have to define what love is. And I think that's, the definitions are important. That's the first step. Most of us, when we think of love, we think of inclination, what they say, al-miyul ila shay, to be inclined to something, to be drawn to it. And that is a facet of it, but that's not what it is. What it is more about recognition of all that is lovable and beautiful in the beloved. Recognizing that the beloved, the thing that you love, the object of your love, is worthy of being loved and should be loved because of the beautiful attributes that it possesses. How else can we describe our love for the Prophet ﷺ? And we haven't been in the same room with him. We haven't seen him anyway in the conventional sense. But we love the Prophet ﷺ. We love the Sahaba. So these are for, that love is there because of there's ma'ani, there's meanings, right? So there's meanings that are associated with this love, that are the foundation of this love, of this mahabba. So a true test of love then is not what the beloved can do for you, right? Not any reward or benefit that you can derive from the beloved, because that's not the definition of love here. Definition of love is recognition of what is beloved about them. And what is beloved about them doesn't mean that which you yourself, where there is a hadhin nafs, right? Hadhin nafs means allotment for personal inclination, for the ego. They're fun to hang out with. I like the way I feel when I'm with them. These are all kinds of ways that people sometimes describe love, but it's not really love. They could be attributes of love, perhaps, but that's not what love is. So the way that you know if you truly love someone or something is whatever the situation, whatever the circumstance, what are you willing to do for that love? Are you willing to sacrifice for that love? And here the Shaykh, he mentions it in the terms of muwafaqa, right? Muwafaqa means, he said, conformity. So to love someone or something so much that even when you're not in the presence of the beloved, you want to be in the presence of beloved. They say one of the signs of true love, Ibn Arabi says this in his book, things la tu'awwal alayhi, things that you don't depend upon. He said love that, or longing that is quenched when you see the beloved is not real longing. It's not real love. So it means you still kind of miss them even if you're with them. You still miss them if you're with them. He said that's the pure love. But if it's quenched, right? Oh, okay, sorry, okay, got tired of you. See you later. That's not love. Love means when you're with them or when you're not with them, there is this deep connection, profound connection, to the degree that you want to be even in your own presence, in your own spirit, in your own soul, to emulate and to feel the presence of the beloved, even if they're not there with you. This was the love of the Sahaba, for the companions, for our Prophet ﷺ. And no one had more love for the Prophet ﷺ than someone like Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And his own name, his laqab, as-Siddiq, came because he is the one, alladhi saddaqahu, right? He believed him in everything without even question. Even the night of Isra and Mi'raj that we mentioned, when they came back to him and asked Abu Bakr, your friend says he went to Bayt al-Maqdis and to the heavens and came back all in the same night, and no one felt that he was missing. What do you think about this? Many of the other companions, the young companions, their deen was shaken, but not Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. He said, if that's what he said, then it's true. Then it happened. So this muwafaqa, one of the poets, he said, تظهر حب الإله وتدعي حب الإله وتخالفه, something like that. هذا غريب في القياس بديع. إن المحب لمن يحب مطيع was the last line. I can't remember the first one exactly. So you claim that you have love of God or divine love, but you do mukhalafa, right? You don't listen. You do the opposite. إن المحب لمن يحب مطيع. إن المحب لمن يحب مطيع. The one who is in love of the beloved will be muti', right? Will follow them, will have muwafaqa, right? They won't want to upset them. And if they think they are worthy of that love, then it becomes about your love is not for you, for your sake, but it's for their sake. So not something that comes back to you, but something that comes back to the object of the love, namely the beloved. So for ours, we say Allah and His Prophet ﷺ. Is the love of Allah and the love of the Prophet ﷺ actually two different things? No, not really. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, من يطع الرسول فقد أطاع الله إن الذين يبايعونك إنما يبايعون الله, as we said before. So whoever follows Allah, whoever is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is obedient to God. And whoever is giving fealty or bay'ah to the Prophet ﷺ, they're actually giving bay'ah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَرَفَعْنَا لَكَ ذِكْرَكَ, and we have raised you in remembrance. وَقَارَنَ اسْمَهُ بِاسْمِهِ, right? So the name of the Prophet ﷺ is usually mentioned at the same time as the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we say أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم. So they are in essence one and the same. What is the wisdom? There's a hikmah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made as an access point, as a way to show us how to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a man, a human being like us. Otherwise, how would we know how to do it? It would be such an abstract exercise and something that would be, mainly inaccessible to most people, unless it was someone who showed us how to do it, and who was the object of that love and allow us to access the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that comes in the form of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it also shows us that we can transcend these personal inclinations and taba'a wal nafs wal hawa wal dunya wal shaitan and all these other things that are part of the human condition. If we can transcend them, then we can also be with the beloved, right? And being with the beloved means being them with every fiber of your being. So physical presence, being amongst them, if they're a human being, is part of it, but that's not everything. So even like Noah is asking me, even how can you miss someone if you're with them? Because there's darajat, right? There's levels of love, and there's level of, the Arabs, they had different names, and they had things called ishawq, and they had things called haim, and things, different words, mahabba, mawadda, that describe kind of levels of love. Imam al-Ghazali talks about it in one of the books of the Ihya, the book on al-Mahabba wal-Rida. He talks a little bit about that. But ash-shawq ila shay means your shawq is actually not quenched. And that's also true with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there is no, haqiqat al-wusul, la wusul, yani. If you think you're on a path to God, and then you're going to get to a point, and like, oh, here I am, I've arrived. Okay, now what? No, the arrival is not an arrival. The arrival is continuous, right? Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the object of our arrival, and huwa la muntahi, He is infinite, and the capacity that He can put on our hearts of meaning and of ma'rifah and knowledge and of love also has no limits, then why would we have this type of thing called an arrival or a limit? So when the ulama at-tasawwuf, they talk about al-wasilun, right, or al-muntahun, or al-kamilun, different words, the ones who've arrived, or the ones who have reached the end of their path, or the ones who are kamil, the ones who have completed their path. It means they've arrived at a level that we can call wilaya, right? Al-wilaya al-khassa, like all the believers are awliya of Allah, every believer, but al-wilaya al-khassa, yani a type of specific type of wilaya, where now the person is mahfuz. Mahfuz means Allah preserves them, and He's put these meanings in their heart. But there's still taraqi, right? There's still longing and they're still traveling and they're still wayfaring, but in a level, right, that's beyond the hujab al-Zulmaniya. Now it's only hujab nuraniya. So instead of opaque veils and veils that are there because of your sinning and because of the influence of your nafs and your tiba and your hawa and your shaitan, now those veils will be veils of light, right? And the veils of light mean thinking that you've arrived, but actually there's other places that you can still go. So al-kamil, right, is still has taraqi until they take their very last breath. So when we talked about the seven souls, you can say al-nafs al-mulhama is a type of wusul. So we talked about the first two nufus, al-nafs al-shahwaniya or nafs al-ammara bis-su', so just a passionate, appetitive soul that doesn't have any limits. Then in nafs al-lawwama, the blaming or the inciting soul, not the inciting soul, but the blaming soul, the soul that takes itself to task about things, and what makes a mistake, it feels remorse, but still not out of that kind of that realm of being affected to a degree by its passions that it makes these kind of big mistakes. And then a nafs al-mulhama, the inspired soul. But that's only the third one. There's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But all of those are levels of wilaya. So al-wilaya al-khassa or bidayat al-wilaya, the beginning is at nafs al-mulhama. And they say the hardest one to cross from one to the next is from a nafs al-lawwama to a nafs al-mulhama. And that usually you can't do this by yourself. That you usually would have to need a mentor, a sheikh, someone who is a guide that's going to help you get from a nafs al-lawwama to al-nafs al-mulhama, to the inspired soul. And that's the beginning of the hadith, beginning to the specific hadith of al-Qudsi, kuntu sam'an alladhi yasma'u bihi wa basaran alladhi yabsuru bihi, akhir hadith. I am the hearing by which he hears, and the seeing by which he sees, and the hand by which he strikes. So now there is a beginning of a mushahada. The salik or the murid or the believer begins to see and witness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the doer even of their own acts. Right? And then their own acts, inshallah, become inspired, and they're not just doing it because of a personal inclination, they're doing it because they feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired them to do it. So this muwafaqa is a big part of it. You have to be in acceptance. If you really love the Prophet ﷺ, and look at the companions, they wanted to do everything just like him. Right? The way he sat, the way he dressed, the way he ate, the way he prayed. They recorded all of these very fine details. They even recorded how many gray beards did he have in his beard. Some said 14, some said 20, some said less than that. They actually counted. They were observing the Prophet ﷺ and they're counting. They talked about what his eyebrows looked like and how thick his eyelashes were and what his hand felt like when they touched it. All of these things are recorded by the companions, the Sahaba, and these are all acts of love. Right? They're not just acts of hadith scholarship. The Sahaba were doing it as acts of love. So when he says al-faqru asra ila man yuhibbuni min sayl al-ma' ila al-muntahad, what is this about this poverty? Well, it's talking about spiritual poverty first and foremost. Al-faqru ila Allah, right? To be in recognition that you are in complete need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that no one else can suffice that need except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So someone who wants to be on the path of the prophets, someone who wants to be on the path of the awliya, that's the path that you have to break free from your atimad, break free from your reliance on false gods. What are the false gods? The asbab are false gods. The means are false gods. Your regular paycheck is a false god. That's not why you're getting your rizq. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitating it for you. Your 401k, all the things that people they think they're depending upon, that is what's keeping them fed and healthy and their cupboards full. None of that has to do with these asbab. We are asked to have ihtiram of the asbab, as we said. We have to respect them. We have to try to live by them. And the Shaykh, he mentions later on in this discourse that if you wish to leave the asbab and then you just are hoping that somehow it will come and people will give you things just like that because you're a good Muslim or because you're a pious person, he said this is a big khud'ah, right? It's qudya to ask people, number one. It's demeaning, and you're demeaning yourself and you're deceiving yourself by doing that. So he said, for me, the Shaykh is talking about himself, I have al-kasab wa tawakkul ala Allah. I don't have anything else. He said, I have kasab, I earn my own living, and I have tawakkul, and I have complete reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't have any, tatallah. I don't have any desire or inclination that because, somehow that I'm worshiping God, I'm a good person, then things should come easy to me, and, people should be willing just to give me money because I'm a pious person. And that was the attitude of some of the fuqara in the time of Sayyid Abd al-Qadir al-Jilani. That's why he's kind of a little bit harsh with them. That was the attitude of some people who would go to the Zawiyah, and they would wear the suf, right? They'd wear the wool garments, and they would dress looking like the fuqara, like the Sufis of the time. And that's why Sheikh was kind of, his tone was a little strong with them. Sometimes they called him ya munafiqun, ya mudda'un, ya kadhabun. These are strong words because he's addressing this delusion in their hearts that, we are this caliber, and so people should be taking care of us and that type of thing. He said, as for me, I don't want anything from anybody, and all I have is al-kasab and at-tawakkul ala Allah. So let's read something else from this discourse. He says, يا غلام, a few pages later, تحتاج إلى إيمان يسيرك في طريق الحق عز وجل وإلى إيقان يثبتك فيها. تحتاج في أول سلوكك في هذا الطريق إلى هميان، وفي آخره إلى إيمان، بخلاف طريق مكة. بعضهم قال طريق مكة يحتاج إلى إيمان وهميان، وهذه الطريق التي قد أشرت إليها تحتاج إلى هميان وإيمان بداية ونهاية. عن سفيان الثوري رحمة الله عليه أنه أول ما طلب العلم كان على وسطه هميان فيه 500 دينار ينفق منه ويتعلم ويدق عليه بيده ويقول لولاك لتمندلوا بنا. فلما حصل له العلم وعرف الحق عز وجل أنفق ما بقي معه على الفقراء في يوم واحد، وقال لو أن السماء حديد لا تمطر والأرض صخر لا تنبت واهتممت برزقي في الطلب إني كافر. عليك بالكسب والتعلق بالسبب إلى أن يقوى إيمانك. ثم انتقل من السبب إلى المسبب. الأنبياء عليهم السلام اكتسبوا وافترضوا وتعلقوا بالأسباب في أول أمرهم وفي الآخر توكلوا. جمعوا بين الكسب والتوكل بداية ونهاية، شريعة وحقيقة. يا محروم، لا تخلو من يدك الكسب في التوكل على ما في أيدي الناس وتكدي منه فتكفر نعمة الأقدار فيمقتك الله عز وجل ويبعدك. ترك الكسب والكدية من الناس عقوبة من الله عز وجل للعبد. So this is important because it gives some context to what we read before. If I can find it. He says here, page 182, or actually the beginning, the end of page 181. He said, "O young man, you need a faith, iman, that will lead you along the path of the Lord of truth, and a conviction, iqan, that will keep you firmly upon it. At the start of your journey on this road, you need a purse, a himyan, and further along it, you need a faith, iman, contrary to the road to Mecca. Some say that the road to Mecca requires a faith and a purse, while this road I have indicated needs a purse and a faith at the beginning, at the end. What does he mean by this? I think what he means, Wallahu A'lam, is the Sahaba, when they made well, I don't think so. I think what he means, when someone is intending to go to Mecca, either for Hajj and Umrah, you need the money to get there, and you also need the Iman, the faith, to carry you there and back, because in their time it was kind of treacherous. You'd be gone months at a time or even longer, and you didn't know if you were going to get there, and if you didn't know that if you'd have enough zed, enough provision, and so forth. So the path had to begin with a strong Iman, and you also needed Himyan, right, which would mean the means to get there. So he said that's why some say that the road to Mecca requires a faith and a purse, while this road I have indicated needs a purse and the faith at the beginning, at the end. So he said in the beginning, the thing that he's emphasizing more is the purse. Why? He goes on to say, it is said of Sufyan al-Thawri, may Allah have mercy upon him, that the first thing he sought was knowledge, ilm. At his waist he had a purse containing 500 dinars from which he paid for his studies. He used to pat it with his hand, saying, but for you they would use us as a towel. When he had acquired learning and really got to know the Lord of Truth, Arafahu, he spent everything he had left on the poor in one single day, and said, even if the sky were a sheet of iron that gave no rain, and the earth a rolling stone, if I worried about seeking my sustenance, I would be an unbeliever. Then he says, you must earn your way and depend upon material means until your faith becomes strong. The shift from the means, the sabab, to the cause, then shift from the means, the sabab, to the cause, yani musabbib, namely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The prophets, peace be upon them, all earned and borrowed and depended on material means at the start of their careers, and later on they trusted in Allah. They combined earning, kasb, and absolute trust, tawakkul, beginning and end. Shari'atan wa haqiqatan. Right? We talked about the Sharia and haqiqah. I'll mention that in a second. Oh, you who are deprived, do not let go of earning in exchange for reliance on what people possess and what you can beg from them. For then you will be ungrateful for the blessings of al-Qadar, the destiny, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be displeased with you and keep you at a distance. To give up earning and go begging from people is a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His servant. So, back to where he started. He was looking at the talabat al-ilm. He was looking at the young students of knowledge, and he was looking at the how they were early in their career. And it's easy to get into a mode where you begin to look at yourself and say, "Well, I'm a pious person. I should be being taken care of by the community because I'm doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't they see that? Why aren't they helping me?" This type of thing. And even though that sounds reasonable, it's actually what he's saying. It is demeaning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's something that you should not seek. Rather, it's better to have kasb in the beginning, right? So that when you enter into the path of knowledge, like Imam Sufyan al-Thawri did, he did it in a way not depending upon anybody. That's why he had a purse of 500 dinars. When his iman became stronger and when he began to know his Lord, then his heart was free from the reliance on the asbab. So he felt at ease to give it away all to the poor. Not because he's going to go begging after that for money. No. He knew that his rizq is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he had more confidence in that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in store in his khaza'in, in the treasuries of Ar-Rahman, than what his actual hand possessed with at the time, which was 500 dinars. And so that was an aid to him in the beginning of his career, so that here Sufyan al-Thawri, so as not to have this waswasa or this false impression that because of one's status with God, then al-arzaq, then sustenance should be forthcoming easily, and people should realize that, and then they go begging to the people. And he said the prophets similarly, right? In the beginning, many of them were shepherds. Our Prophet ﷺ was a shepherd. He also worked in a partnership with what was to be his future wife Khadija radiallahu anha. Yani it was min bab al-qirad. So she gave him money to spend and to buy things for her and make investments. So they had kasb, right? And then later on, they still had means by which they survived, but as a way of taraqi, right, of they're raised in degrees, their tawakkul, their reliance upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was such a degree that they didn't think about, when is the next thing coming or not coming. And there are some hadith that indicate the Prophet ﷺ didn't like even for 1 dirham to spend the night in his house. He would like to dispense with it. Another hadith indicated that sometimes he would save up to a year's worth of qut, a year's worth of daily provisions for his family. So they said saving like that is jaiz, right? It's permissible. The main point is that your heart does not become dependent upon that, right? Not dependent upon the sabab. You want your heart to be dependent upon al-musabbib. Because of what if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أخذ منك السبب أو ذاك السبب. What if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away that particular sabab, that particular means? Does that mean that your rizq has been cut off? Right? And people have this saying, especially in the Muslim world, like if they lose their job, they say, oh, قطعوا رزقي. These people, they cut off my sustenance. They deprive me, haramuni. All of that is not commensurate and is not muwafaqa with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. نحن نرزقهم لا نسألك رزقا نحن نرزقهم والعاقبة للتقوى. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one, هو الرزاق ذو القوة المتين. He's the one who's going to give us arzaq, not anyone else. And so the idea is it's okay to possess means. And we saw in other places, the Shaykh talks about that. And that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you means, and He gives you much, it's not for you to indulge yourself in it, but there's an amana associated with it. So that particular amana, that trust, means that you should be thinking about others and thinking about what is murad Allah, what is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires of you by giving you this means. So, and there was a section before that will actually sheds further light on that. So I'll just go to the English in the interest of time. Page 180, for those who are following. If you wish to attain to their stations, and here's talking about Ahlullah wa Ahl al-Ma'rifah, their manazil, you must experience the reality or tahqiq of Islam. Then the giving up of sins, both those that are external and those that are internal. Then healing restraint or wara'. Then abstinence, zuhd, from worldly things, even those that are permissible, mubah and lawful. Then satisfaction with the grace, fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then abstinence from His grace and satisfaction with His nearness. So there's an order here, there's a tartib. He says first, تحقق الإسلام, يعني ظاهرا, practice Islam, 5 prayers, zakah, fasting, all those things, al-akhlaq, al-hasana, to imbibe oneself with good character. This is tahqiq al-Islam. Then giving up of sins, stay away from the sins, both those that are external and those that are internal, because the internal ones are the ones that drive and propel the external ones. So ghil, enmity and rancor and hasad and jealousy, these are all internal sins that will drive the external sins. So give both of those up. Then il-wara', right, to restrain from things that fiha shubha, things that are ambiguous. Then he said abstinence, zuhud, from worldly things, even those that are permissible, mubah, and those that are lawful, halal, but they're not taking you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're impediments towards the way to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then satisfaction with the fadl of Allah. So realizing it's not from your kasb, that is from fadlullah, that you are looking to the fadl, you are looking to the ataya, that Allah gives you, not what other people give you. Then abstinence from His grace, right? And then al-fana' an hadha al-fadl, right? And then saying, wait, do I need Allah to give me things? هل من اللازم يتفضل علي حتى أعبده وأحبه? Does he have to give me things for me to love him and for me to want to grow closer and near to him? No. Then you suffice yourself with the satisfaction with his nearness, with al-qurb. And qurb is what he was beginning from the very beginning. So the path of trial and tribulation and difficulties and different seasons, and the parable that Rumi talks, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, the guest house. So you're going to have sorrow, you're going to have misery, you're going to have happiness. They're all going to come into your house, and you welcome all of them, and you entreat your guest as a guest should be treated, right? You be welcoming to them, and you be nice to them, and you don't try to make them leave before it's their time to leave. So all of these ma'ani, all of these meanings, from different emotional responses to different external stimuli and factors and circumstances that Allah throws your way, they're all there for your tarbiyah. They're all there for ta'deeb, right? They're all there to inculcate within you this qurb ila Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So both on the dark days and both on the light days, both in the summer and in the winter, both in the fall and the spring. That's the idea. So this is ma'na al-qurb. So then he says, when you're generally satisfied with his nearness, he will shower his grace upon you, and he will open unto you the doors of his aqsam, his allotments, the door of his kindness, his lutf, his mercy, his rahmah, his favor, his minnah. He will make this world narrow for you, then he will expand it to an extreme. This is how it will be for a few individuals amongst the awliya, the saints, and the siddiqeen, because of his knowledge of their pious devotion, for they let nothing distract them from him. As for the majority, this world is kept back from them, because he wants them to concentrate on him, to enter his presence, and to put their requests to him. If he were to grant them this world, they might well become preoccupied with it to the neglect of his service, and might become attached to it. This is the usual case, while the former is extraordinary. Now Allah opens up the dunya for certain people because they can handle it, but many people, it will be a distraction. And he said, no rule can be based on the extraordinary. Our Prophet ﷺ is one of those to whom this world has been offered and who have not let it distract them from his service. He paid no attention to allotted benefits due to the completeness of his abstinence and detachment. He was offered the keys to the treasures of the earth, but he rejected them and said, my Lord, let me live poor, miskeen, let me die poor, and resurrect me together with the masakeen, with the poor. So that means if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you and he's opened up the dunya for you and he's made you a person of means, then he has done so for a hikmah. He's done so for a wisdom, for a reason. And then the attitude of all should be zuhud. The attitude of those who want to be on a path to God and have a greater sort of more path of qurb and nearness and intimacy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then these are the sacrifices that have to be made. These are the tribulations that one may go through. And if you are made a person of means, then it's an amana, it's a trust, as he said in previous discourses. And if you are not, and Allah gives you kafaf, Allah gives you enough to worry about to get by, then that's a great, great blessing too. Because that means he's removed distractions from your path, and he wants you to ask him and to concentrate on him and to seek him. And that's ultimately why we're all here to begin with. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.